Hi guys, my name is Shayda Campbell from the 11th Apartment blog. Today we are revisiting Fauxlligraphy or fake calligraphy or modern calligraphy, whatever you want to call it. This is a super versatile font. It can be used across mediums for all different kinds of projects, from daily planners to labeling to greeting cards. Today we'll talk about how to use one simple technique to create all kinds of different fonts. And while we're using a Sharpie today, I want you to get the technique down because eventually we are going to learn to do this with a nib and ink like I'm doing here. So grab that Sharpie and let's get started. We'll start by getting right back down to basics with this font. So to begin, start by mustering up sort of the best cursive that you can do and write out your word, making sure that it is straight so that you're not angling up or angling down as you write. And make sure your letters are evenly spaced. This is very important. Try to keep each letter the same distance from the last. Okay, and so once you've done that, you've got your word, it's straight, and the letters are evenly spaced, you're going to thicken each letter on the down stroke like I'm doing now. So on the F, it's that left-hand length side. That's where you would go down when you write. Then you go up and then down on the left-hand side of the O, and then up and then down through the middle of the X. So we'll thicken there, and then down on the E, up again, down and thicken, and on the Y down, and then we thicken that edge there. So I hope that makes sense. It's a pretty simple formula. The strokes that you form when you're pulling the pen towards your body, or the down strokes, those are the ones you want to go back in and thicken, and that's what's going to give that look of calligraphy. And this is sort of a way to do fake calligraphy, or it's called Fauxlligraphy or modern calligraphy, and that's just it at its most basic. So now let's try another example. I'm going to write out the word hello. I'm just, again, keeping it straight, making my cursive as nice as possible. You can use any sort of cursive, however your writing looks. That's okay. Don't worry too much about that. Just keep your letters evenly spaced. And then once your word is written out, go back and thicken on the down strokes. So wherever that pen is going down or towards your body, those are where you're going to thicken up. And I just sort of thicken a little bit on each side of that stroke, of that line, to help keep it even. But if your letters aren't quite evenly spaced, thickening can also help to sort of even things up a little bit if you need to. And once you've thickened up those strokes or lines, you can go back in and color them in, but you don't have to. You could leave them white. Here I'm just sort of doing some really simple scribbly line shading, and I think that looks kind of cool. There's so much you can do with these modern calligraphy type fonts. And here I'll show you, actually, if you start out in pencil, that's great because you can erase it and that gives you some more options. I'll just go a little darker so you guys can actually see that. So writing the word love, and then I'm thickening on my downstroke on each letter, going on both sides of the stroke. They're like, thickening on both sides of the downstroke so that it stays nice and even. And then once I'm done that, I can go in and get rid of all those excess lines. So just erase all that, and then when you come back in with the Sharpie, you know exactly which lines are your good lines, and you can do this really nice thing where you can leave that thicken stroke white if you want to, or you can leave it blank. You don't have to color it in because you've done it in pencil first, and then erase. So I think that looks really pretty too. So as I said, a lot of different options for this font. And I'm a big fan of this, just leaving it blank like that. It just has a really nice, simple look, but of course there's so much you could do with this. One nice option that's not too dramatic or crazy is just to do one simple line. So I'll do that, and not right down the middle, although you could go right down the middle, but just sort of on 1/3 there. So just sort of separating, defining, and creating a little bit of interest. I think that looks pretty cool. And then you could always color that in. I'm just using a little bit of line shading, really simple. And then even if you do shade that in, you could go back in and do another line. I mean, you could do anything. You could color it in pink. You could do polka dots, whatever you want. So lots of different options there. And now I'm just going to show you another example here. We're just going to go over it one more time so you really get the idea. Keep your letters straight. Just use your own handwriting. Evenly space your letters. And then we'll go back in and you thicken any time the pen is being pulled towards your body. So on the R you would go up and then you come back towards yourself, so you thicken that, or on the I, sorry. And I'm just doing not a very thick extra line here, and that will also affect how this font looks, how thick or how thin you keep that, that downstroke. And then I'm just going to color that in solid. Again, this is just your most basic fake calligraphy, just nice solid black, not a really thick addition, just a simple addition. So really simple, that's it at its most basic. But then what I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to add a little outline or a little shadow. I'm just doing it only on the right hand side, the right hand outer side of each letter. And it just adds, again, just another something else to this font. So if you're doing a poster or a quote, there's so many ways, there's so many things you can do to change this font up and oops, I missed a spot and make it a really effective lettering. Okay, so now that we've got our modern calligraphy or our fake calligraphy style down, we're getting comfortable with it, we're going to kind of take it to the next level. So forget everything that I said about keeping your letters straight. Now we're going to play with the placement of the letters to create movement and harmony on the page and visual interest. So instead of having your letters straight, you're going to start sketching out your word and thinking about ways in which you can play and move those letters around. So here I'm kind of taking that O up and then I'm going down, dropping it down with the V and just getting a little more movement in there. And I was kidding about forgetting everything I said before. If you do want the word to be straight, it is very important to keep it straight so that it doesn't look wonky. But once you've got that down, you might have a project where the word just isn't sitting right, especially a longer word. It will just look like this long caterpillar sitting on the page. So sometimes you need to move the letters up and down to actually get a little more balance in terms of your lettering design. And once you've sketched it out and you've got your design the way you want, the formula is exactly the same. You can see I've done it there. Thicken the downstroke and color it in. And for my next example, I'm writing out the name Mabel. So I just wrote it out. Okay, now I know what it looks like. Now I'm going to try sketching it and getting those letters to move around. So I've taken the A up, dropped the B, and I kind of tried it some other ways, but sort of my initial one was the one that I liked the best. So there, that's it there. Still need to work on that a little. It looks a little bit unbalanced. That M's not quite big enough. There we go. Getting some movement in there. The letters still need to be evenly spaced and they need to be the same size. Be careful when you're moving them around. It's easy to make one or two of them too small or something like that. So I'll go over that in Sharpie. Yeah, and now I've got this sort of fluid, interesting looking word that looks nice and whimsical and free on the page. And again, simple formula. You're going to stick to that thickening on the downstroke, and now is the time when you can bring all those other ideas into play. Do you want to thicken it a lot or a little? Do you want to leave it blank? Do you want that negative space, or do you want to color it in, or do you want to color it in with lines, or whatever you want? So it's totally up to you, but moving those letters around is just one more thing you can do. This modern calligraphy is probably my favorite style of lettering because it's so beautiful and so effective, and you can use it in any medium. So you don't have to just use your Sharpie. Think about doing it with ink or with paint or whatever you want. And here I'm going to show you how easy it is to do with watercolor, especially if you have the right brush. So I'm just mixing up some black paint, cheap craft quality watercolors, a little bit of clean water, and I've got one special brush. Well, not really special. I'm just using a small flat, square-tipped paintbrush. So if you can see that there, it's quite small, but it has a nice, perfectly square bristle. And I just drag it down, and I'm just doing those down strokes first. So I've got a nice wet disc of paint, and I've got a blotting sheet there to get rid of excess paint, and then I just pull the brush down right on its side, just pull it down so it's very flat. You use the flat part of the brush, and you start by doing those down strokes and just pull the brush towards you. You should have no trouble keeping your hand still because you're pulling it towards your body. And then you go back in with the tiny side, or with this, the finer side of the brush, and you just fill in those other areas, those other parts of the letters. No need to change your brush. You can just turn it on its side and get the sort of the finer tip of that brush. And it's really that simple. You'll have this one down in no time at all, I'm positive. Let's do one more example so you guys can see how easy it is. I've just written out the word jams. And again, if it helps you, if you're still kind of forgetting where to thicken, just draw that in slightly with a pencil so you know exactly which lines you're going to use first, which lines you're going to do first with your paintbrush. Then get your paint nice and wet, test it out on the blotting paper there, and take that flat square brush and just drag it towards your body. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just use the whole head of the brush. And you can see I'm just dragging it towards me, and you can see the letters are already taking shape. Just follow your initial sketch, and then you just go back in, turn that brush on its side, and just use the very tip of it there to finish up those letters and do the upstrokes. This kind of looks like it says jums, but other than that, I think it turned out really nice. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope if there's one thing you've gotten out of today's video, it's that this technique is so versatile. And once you've got the technique down, you can create all kinds of different fonts. You can use it across mediums. And of course, you can use this font to create all kinds of different projects. I think it's great for everything from greeting cards to labels to just my own personal planner and notes. So I will see you next week with a new video. Until next Friday, you can find me over on my blog at The 11th Apartment or on Instagram at The 11th Apartment. See you next Friday.